The Imperial Navy serves as one of the primary armed forces available to humanity in the 41st millennium. While the Astra Militarum represent the Imperium's forces on the ground, the Imperial Navy represent the immense fleets of starships that maintain order between the worlds of the Imperium. In ancient times, during the Emperor's Great Crusade in the 30th millennium to reunite the scattered worlds of humanity, the Imperial Navy didn't exist as its own single force, but was part of the greater Imperial Army and was known as the Armada Imperialis. Its impressive war fleets were tasked with patrolling and defending Imperial-controlled space, helping to secure strategic pathways used for navigating the stellar region. After the devastation wrought upon mankind following the events of the Horus Heresy, the vast fleet of the Imperial Army was re-established as its own, separate entity, as part of the reformation overseen by the Primarch Rabute Guilliman. These actions were intended to weaken the Imperial armed forces, protecting humanity from a similar catastrophe should another outbreak of rebellion against the Emperor's rule occur, by reducing the risk of any one military force becoming too powerful, as was the case with the former War Master Horus. In similar fashion, Guilliman decreed that all Space Marine legions were to be broken down into smaller chapters to reduce their individual strength. Now we look back to the beginnings of humanity's technological expansion, to a period known as the Age of Technology. The early period in the Age of Technology was given the subname of the Stellar Exodus, as it was defined by humanity's earliest interstellar colonization of worlds beyond the Sol system. In this period, spacecraft were still only capable of achieving sublight speeds, making travel beyond the Sol system take generations. This was a significant factor that severely restricted interstellar trade and led to colonies being isolated from each other and from old Earth, which was now referred to as Terra. Starships that ventured to unknown regions also carried design templates for powerful combat walkers called Knights. These large, bipedal machines were constructed using salvaged materials from the starships themselves, and would prove to be invaluable in performing heavy engineering tasks, as well as defending settlements from the hostile entities that posed a threat to human life. The worlds protected by these towering guardians would later be designated as Night Worlds. The true spark that propelled mankind forwards in the Age of Technology came to light around the 18th millennium, with the development of warp drive and Geller field technology. Human spacecraft could now make use of the recently discovered extra-dimensional realm known as the Immaterium, or the Warp, travelling vast distances through space in a relatively short amount of time. Despite being able to traverse the galaxy by jumping multiple light years, the many dangers inherent in the warp meant that the starships could still take several years to reach their intended destination. Many would never arrive at all. Slowly, through many disasters and refinements in Geller field technology, humanity learned to use the warp to make faster-than-light journeys out of their own star system. Development of the powerful warp drive systems would also greatly accelerate, and subsequently, so did humanity's expansion into the galaxy. For the first time, interstellar trade and communication between the outreaching colonies and the homeworld of mankind, Terra, was made possible. This would be one of the defining factors that led to mankind's rise to power. Another vital development in the Age of Technology was the creation of the navigator gene and the resulting birth of the psychically attuned humans known as the navigators. Using a navigator, Imperial spacecraft could make longer and more accurate warp jumps than previously possible when relying solely on computer guidance systems for navigation through the perils of the Immaterium. Navigators have the unique ability to gaze into the realm of chaos itself. They use this heightened knowledge to identify stable pathways through warp space and to make course corrections, helping to prevent the starship and all of its occupants from wandering into an unfortunate doom. The navigators themselves are now guided by the light of the Emperor, being able to perceive the psychic light known as the Astronomicon, enabling them to harness their powers in guiding Imperial starships through the tangled currents of the warp, making once impossible journeys now a reality. These abilities make navigators essential to the Imperium's continued survival, as without them, interstellar transportation, trade, and communication would be severely impacted. The origins of the Imperial Navy stem from the largest and most ambitious military endeavour ever undertaken by mankind, the Great Crusade. As mighty as the Emperor's legions of Space Marines were, this epic undertaking would have been impossible without the thousands of warp-capable vessels that transported the superhuman warriors of the Astartes legions and millions of Imperial Army soldiers from one region of space to the next. The Great Crusade saw a staggering array of vessels constructed and brought into service. Some were only used for a matter of months before being declared obsolete, while more successful designs went on to be mass-produced and modified as the decades progressed. The first vessels to enter the service of the Imperium were constructed in the orbital foundries on Terra. As the Imperium expanded, and with the newly forged alliance with the Mechanicum secured, many more shipyards were added, such as the Ring of Iron that surrounds Mars and the orbital shipyards of Saturn. Driven by the will of the Emperor, the first expeditionary fleets pushed outwards into the galaxy. The leading vessels were often commanded by individuals called rogue traders, former governors of independent worlds that had been brought into Imperial compliance. The rogue traders were expected to scout ahead of the bulk of the Great Crusade, supported by their own armies and any supplemental assets. This was often a dangerous prospect, as operating so far ahead of the Emperor's crusading armies meant the rogue traders could expect little to no support should they encounter a hostile force too powerful for them to overcome. As the Imperium continued to expand, so too did its vast fleet of starships. Countless treasures of technology were recovered from long-lost worlds. Some unique, newly acquired vessels were constructed by methods even the most accomplished adepts of Mars could not hope to replicate, prime examples being the Terminus Est and the Phalanx. However, many designs were possible to reproduce, and before long, the Imperium's military forces acquired their own distinctive array of warships. The ships of the Imperial fleet were built for void supremacy, designed to dominate the uncharted regions of space and repel any hostile forces with ease. They ranged from impressive battleships, multi-kilometer-long engines of doom, their armour concentrated to the fore, and their flanks decked out with rank upon rank of broadside gun batteries, to stripped bare warp runners and countless classes of transport and supply ships. The large variety of vessels can be broadly divided into three size categories: battleships and grand cruisers, cruisers, and escorts. The actual size of the Imperial starships can vary considerably, but in general, battleships and grand cruisers are between 6 and 8 kilometers in length, cruisers are between 5 and 6 kilometers long, and escort vessels are between 0.75 and 3 kilometers long. Battleships are truly massive starships, equipped with enormously powerful weapon systems and void shields strong enough to repel all but the most devastating firepower. They usually serve as the flagship of a fleet and are commanded by an experienced and proven Imperial Lord Admiral. Although very powerful, due to their sheer size and bulk, battleships are relatively slow and can be difficult to maneuver. The most common classes of battleships include the Emperor, which can carry an impressive amount of attack craft in addition to its normal weapons. The Victory, known for its heavy lance batteries, and the Retribution, which is noted for its powerful broadside firepower and its large number of torpedo bays. There are much older classes of battleships still in existence, such as the Apocalypse and Oberon class used by Battlefleet Armageddon, and many more rare, modified designs, but the Emperor and more recent Retribution class vessels are by far the most common battleships in the Imperial Navy. Imperial battleship crews are said to range from anywhere between 25 to 3 million souls, including Imperial Navy forces to defend against enemy boarding assaults. Each battleship represents a significant investment of resources to construct and can require considerable effort to maintain. For this reason, battleships are typically constructed only in the largest Imperial shipyards in orbit of the major Adeptus Mechanicus forge worlds. These vessels are precious assets to the Imperium and are carefully deployed, usually in only larger fleet formations and the most critical engagements. Ironclad battleships are a much older variant of the standard battleship and are based around the same hull design. These warships were built before the advent of void shield technology and so lacked the defensive capabilities afforded to the more modern designs. Instead, their hulls were reinforced with layers of thick adamantium plate armor to help provide protection against enemy firepower. Ironclads are now extremely rare. Their archaic design has limited the number of forge worlds still capable of maintaining and repairing them. Despite being almost entirely phased out of production, those few remaining vessels have been recommissioned for a variety of specific uses. Some ironclads are used as literal battering rams to crash directly into and plough straight through enemy vessels. While void shield technology can protect a ship from high velocity firepower, the slow-moving mass of an ironclad can simply bypass such advanced defense systems. Ironclads used for this purpose have their hulls braced and their thick frontal armor plating further reinforced to allow it to withstand the tremendous impact forces of colliding with enemy ships. Some ironclads are even used as mobile planet destroyers. The mere approach of one of these dreaded vessels can be enough to end entire conflicts, as they're fitted with a gargantuan linear cannon that runs the entire length of the ship's keel. The cannon is powered directly by the stern fusion reactors and is one of the most powerful weapons at the Imperial Navy's disposal. Once the pinnacle of all Imperial voidcraft, Grand Cruisers are similar in size to the mighty battleship, albeit of a much older design. The Avenger class is one such example of a Grand Cruiser, which carried a powerful array of broadside firepower. Compared to battleships, however, Grand Cruisers lack many of the features that are typical in the more current class of Imperial Navy vessels, such as the armor reinforcement on the prow. As such, many have been decommissioned and removed from active service. Some remain functional, however, and can be called into action by the Imperial Navy's reserve fleets, should such a need arise. Moving down in scale from the battleship and Grand Cruiser, we arrive at the cruiser. Cruisers often form the bulk of an Imperial Navy fleet, and although not as imposing as the powerful battleships, cruisers are much faster and can still bring a daunting amount of firepower to bear. Cruisers still require a large crew complement, anywhere between 10,000 and 1 million occupants, to ensure efficient operation. While cruisers contain advanced and complex technology, they can still be produced on smaller forge worlds or on orbital shipyards capable of accommodating their large size. The versatility of the cruiser's hull design allows for different combinations of broadside weapon batteries, lance turrets, and attack craft hangars. This design flexibility has led to many different variants and classes of cruiser over the years, and despite being centered around a common core, their physical form can vary widely throughout the Imperium. In many cases, There can even be differences between cruisers of the same class, depending on their region of origin. A lunar-class cruiser constructed in the Segmentum Obscurus, for example, may bear little resemblance to a lunar-class cruiser constructed in the Ultima Segmentum. However, they will all have roughly the same operating characteristics and weapon configurations, and so can be easily serviced by any orbital facility throughout Imperial-controlled space. The more distinctive cruiser designs can be divided into subclasses, such as the battlecruiser and light cruiser. Battlecruisers, although based on the regular cruiser hull, are generally larger and more heavily armed, incorporating more advanced power distribution systems capable of supporting battleship-grade weaponry in a cruiser-sized hull. A notable example of this is the Mars-class battlecruiser, with its fighter bays, broadside batteries, dorsal lance turrets, and an immense, prow-mounted Nova cannon capable of attacking targets at extreme range. Light cruisers are smaller craft that sit somewhere between the cruiser and escort ship in scale. These ships combine the firepower and durability of a standard cruiser with the speed and maneuverability of an escort ship. The Dauntless class, for example, is a very common light cruiser used by the Imperial Navy. Extremely self-sufficient, its balance of mobility and firepower can pose a threat to a wide range of targets, even larger enemy capital ships. Due to their relatively simple construction, especially for a capital ship, light cruisers are a common sight in the Imperial Navy's vast fleets. Their well-balanced and efficient design makes them suited for reconnaissance patrols and for maintaining a presence where their speed and maneuverability are an advantage, and where having a larger number of smaller ships allows the Imperial Navy to monitor a wider area of space. Escort ships are the smallest type of warship in the Imperial Navy's fleets, and can range in size from 3 km all the way down to 0.75 km from prow to stern. Escorts are divided into two main subclasses, frigates and destroyers. Frigates are larger than destroyers, bearing more powerful weapon systems and heavier armour. Destroyers, however, being smaller and lighter than frigates, are by far the fastest and most agile interstellar warship the Imperial Navy has to offer. Escort ships operate as a group and are organised in squadrons of 2 to 6 vessels, tasked with protecting capital ships against enemy attack craft and slow-moving torpedoes. They also operate behind gun lines, delivering the killing blow to damaged enemy cruisers, allowing larger vessels to concentrate their firepower on higher priority targets in the enemy formation. With all the assets at its disposal, the powerful ships of the Imperial Navy continue to defend humanity from the horrors that lie within the darkness of the uncharted regions of space.